Dr. Han Bin Lee sat in his office at Seoul Interstellar Medical Center, looking at the stars through his window. It was late evening, and most of his staff had gone home. The quiet helped him think about his difficult cases. He picked up his cup of tea, but before he could take a sip, his computer screen lit up with an urgent message. The message was marked with the highest security level he had ever seen. His hand shook slightly as he pressed his palm against the scanner to open it. The screen showed a video call request from an unknown source. When he accepted the call, he almost dropped his cup. On the screen was a Myroth warrior. Their species was famous across 3 galaxies for their strength and battle skills. They looked like tall, powerful humans, but with gray skin and sharp features. This one wore the gold armor of their military leaders. "Dr. Lee," the Myroth said in a deep voice, "I am Commander Verix of the Myroth Empire. We need your help." Han Bin tried to keep his voice steady. "How can I help the mighty Myroth Empire?" "Our crown prince is dying," Verix said. His voice was filled with worry, something no one had ever heard from a Myroth before. "Our best healers cannot save him. We have tried everything." Han Bin leaned forward. "What are his symptoms?" "He cannot move his legs. The problem is spreading up his body. Our healing technology does nothing." Verix paused. "We have watched your work with other species, Dr. Lee. You have solved medical problems that others said were impossible." Han Bin thought about this carefully. The Myroth were not friends of Earth. They had conquered many worlds, though they had stayed away from human space after learning about Earth's medical technology. Many people feared them. "Commander," Han Bin said, "I will need to talk to Earth's leaders about this, and I will need more information about the prince's condition." "We do not have much time," Verix said. "I am sending you his medical data now. Please, Dr. Lee. The prince is young. He should be leading armies, not lying in bed getting weaker every day." Han Bin looked at the incoming data. His eyes widened as he read it. "This is very serious," he said. "I will need to bring a team." "Bring whoever you need," Verix said. "A Myroth battleship will pick you up in 2 days. We will make sure you have everything you require." After the call ended, Han Bin sat back in his chair. His tea was cold now. He picked up his phone and called Dr. Jae-yun Park, the best neurologist he knew. "Jae-yun," he said when she answered, "how would you like to make history?" The next day was full of meetings. Earth's leaders were worried about sending their doctors to help the Myroth. Some thought it was a trap. Others said they should let the Myroth suffer. But Han Bin spoke up in every meeting. "We took an oath to help all who need healing," he said. "If we turn them away, we are no better than they are. And maybe, just maybe, we can show them a better way." Dr. Taiwan Kim, a genetic specialist, joined the team last. The prince's problem might be in his modified genes, he told Han Bin. The Myroth have changed their bodies to be stronger, faster, better at healing. But sometimes changes like that can go wrong. 2 days later, Han Bin stood with Jae-yun and Taiwan at the spaceport. Above them, the huge black shape of a Myroth battleship blocked out the stars. As they walked up to the ship, Han Bin thought about all the worlds that had feared this sight. But today, the mighty Myroth were not here to fight. They were here to ask for help. A young Myroth officer met them at the door. "Dr. Lee," he said, bowing slightly, "welcome aboard the War Victory." He looked at the doctor's medical bags. "I never thought I would see human doctors on our ship, but then I never thought we would need them." Han Bin smiled kindly. "Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to ask for help," he said. As the ship's doors closed behind them, Han Bin knew that everything was about to change. He just hoped it would change for the better. The 3 human doctors spent their first day on the Myroth ship, War Victory, setting up their medical equipment. The ship's medical bay was huge, filled with machines the doctors had never seen before. Most of these devices were meant for making soldiers stronger, not healing them. Dr. Jae-yun Park studied the Myroth medical records on her tablet. Their technology is amazing, she told Hanbin, but it's all focused on making them better warriors. They don't seem to understand basic healing. Taiwan was checking their medical supplies when a tall Myroth warrior walked in. It was Commander Varix. "Dr. Lee," he said, "we will reach the home world in 3 days. How is your team settling in?" "We're doing well," Hanbin answered. "But we need to know more about your people's medical history, especially about your genetic improvements." Varix's face showed no emotion, but his hands tightened into fists. "That information is secret. It is the source of our strength. It might also be the source of your prince's illness," Taiwan said quietly. "We can't help if we don't have all the information." The commander stood silent for a long moment. Finally, he pulled out a small data crystal. "This contains our medical history for the past 1,000 years. No outsider has ever seen it." As they studied the data, the doctors learned many surprising things. The Myroth had changed their own bodies over many generations. They had made themselves stronger, faster, and better at healing wounds. But they had never thought about what these changes might do to them over time. On the second day, Jia Yun was working late when she heard shouting in the hallway. She found 2 Myroth warriors arguing with Taiwan. "Our ways have kept us strong for 1,000 years. One warrior said, "We don't need humans to tell us how to heal." Hanbin stepped between them. "Your prince is getting worse every day," he said calmly. "Your ways aren't working anymore. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is accept help." The warriors left, but their angry words stayed in the air. Later that night, Hanbin found Jia Yun looking out at the stars. "They're scared," she said. "They've always been the strongest, the ones everyone else feared. Now they have to depend on us, and it terrifies them." Hanbin nodded. Fear can make anyone angry, even the mighty Myroth. On the 3rd day, they reached the Myroth homeworld. It was beautiful, with 3 moons and rings like Saturn. Their ship landed near a huge city with tall black buildings that reached into the clouds. The royal palace was in the center of the city. As they walked through its halls, they saw paintings of great battles and mighty warriors. But they also saw newer paintings, showing Myroth scientists and doctors. "These were painted by my son," said a quiet voice. They turned to see an older Myroth woman wearing simple robes instead of armor. "I am Queen Merix. My younger son, Prince Terix, is the one you're here to help." "Does he share your interest in science?" Hanbin asked, pointing to the paintings. The queen's eyes were sad. "Yes, he always wanted to be a healer, not a warrior. Some say that's why he's sick now, because he's not strong enough." "Being different isn't weakness," Jia Yun said firmly. "It's often the source of new strength." They reached the prince's room. Before they went in, the queen touched Hanbin's arm. "Please," she said, "save my son. Show our people that there are other ways to be strong." Hanbin bowed slightly. "We will do everything we can," he promised. As they entered the room, he knew their real work was just beginning. They had to save not just the prince, but maybe the future of the Myroth people themselves. Prince Terix lay still on the medical bed. His gray skin had turned a pale silver color, and his breathing was shallow. Dr. Hanbin Lee had treated many species before, but he had never seen a Myroth look so weak. "How long has he been like this?" Hanbin asked Queen Merix, who stood by her son's bed. "The weakness started in his feet 3 months ago," she replied. "Now he cannot move anything below his chest. Our healers say the paralysis is moving upward." Dr. Jia Yun Park ran her medical scanner over the prince's body. The readings made her frown. "His nerve signals are very strange," she said. "It's as if his body is fighting against itself." Taiwan studied the genetic data on his screen. "I think I see the problem," he said. "Their enhanced healing system is attacking their own nerve cells. It's like their bodies can't tell the difference between damaged cells and healthy ones anymore." The prince opened his eyes. They were a bright silver color, unusual even for a Myroth. "You are the human doctors," he said softly. Have you found out what's wrong with me? Han Bin stepped closer to the bed. We think we have, Your Highness. Your body's healing system is too strong. It's hurting the parts of your body it should protect. Commander Varix, who had been standing quietly in the corner, moved forward. That's impossible. Our healing factor is what makes us strong. It cannot be the problem. Sometimes our greatest strength can become our greatest weakness, Jia said gently. She showed them the scan results. See these patterns. The prince's enhanced healing system is treating his healthy nerve cells as if they were enemies. Taiwan added, we believe this problem might affect other Myroth too. Have any other warriors shown similar symptoms? The queen and commander exchanged worried looks. 3 young warriors in the eastern province, Varix admitted. We thought it was from training too hard. Prince Terix tried to sit up but couldn't. Mother, he said, remember what I told you about my research, about how our bodies might be changing too much. The queen nodded. Terix has been studying our genetic modifications for years. He believed we were pushing our bodies too far. Han Bin looked at his team. They had found the problem, but fixing it would be much harder. They would need to find a way to change the Myroth healing system without destroying it completely. We can help, Han Bin said, but we'll need to try something new. Something that combines human medical science with Myroth biology. The other healers won't like that, Varix warned. They believe mixing our medicine with other species makes us weak. I don't care what they think, the prince said suddenly. His voice was weak but determined. I've studied human medicine in secret for years. I believe it's our future. The queen touched her son's hand. Then we will try it. Commander, please give the human doctors whatever they need. As they left the prince's room to prepare their treatment plan, Jia spoke quietly to Han Bin. We're not just treating one patient anymore. We're trying to save an entire species from their own pride. Han Bin nodded. And we have to do it in a way that helps them keep their strength while learning new kinds of power. He looked back at the prince's room. At least we have one Myroth who understands that already. They had 3 days to develop a treatment before the paralysis reached the prince's heart. 3 days to prove that sometimes the strongest thing a warrior can do is trust a healer from another world. Dr. Taiwan Kim had not slept in 2 days. He stared at the genetic charts on his screen until the letters blurred together. The prince had less than 24 hours left before the paralysis would reach his heart. I found something, he called to Han Bin and Jia. Look at this gene sequence. It's the one that gives the Myroth their fast healing. Han Bin looked at the screen. What about it? It's change. Not just from the original Myroth genes, but it's still changing now. Their bodies are still trying to become stronger, even though they're already too strong. Jia moved closer to see. Like a machine that won't turn off. Exactly, Taiwan said. And I think I know how to fix it. But the Myroth won't like it. They called Commander Varix and Queen Merix to the medical lab. The queen looked tired, but she stood straight and proud. We have found a way to help the prince, Han Bin said. But we will need to turn off his healing powers for a short time. The commander's face turned dark with anger. Turn off our healing. That would make him as weak as weak as a human, Jia asked quietly. Yet here you are, asking humans for help. The queen raised her hand for silence. Explain how this will save my son. Taiwan showed them the genetic charts. He used simple words to explain the complex problem. Think of your healing power like a soldier who fights anything that enters your body. But now that soldier is confused, it's attacking your own body. We need to send the soldier to sleep for a while so we can fix the confusion. How long would he be without his healing power? The queen asked. 3 days, Han Bin said. After that, we can wake it up again. But it will be different. Less aggressive, more controlled. And if you fail? Commander Varix asked. Then I will die, said a weak voice. They turned to see Prince Terix in a floating medical bed. 2 nurses had brought him to the lab. But I'm dying anyway. At least this way we might learn something that helps others. The prince's silver eyes looked at each person in the room. Commander, you taught me that a warrior must be brave. Mother, you taught me that a leader must think of his people first. Let them try. The queen touched her son's face gently. Do it, she said to the doctors. Save my son. The next few hours were very busy. The human doctors prepared their equipment while Myroth healers watched with worried faces. Han Bin noticed that some of the younger Myroth seemed more curious than afraid. One of them, a young healer named Kai, even offered to help. I've read about human medicine, he whispered to Han Bin. In secret, of course. I think you're right about our healing powers being too strong. Finally, everything was ready. The prince lay in the medical chamber, breathing slowly. Han Bin looked at his team. Remember, he said, we're not just treating the prince. We're showing the Myroth a new way to be strong. He turned to Queen Merix. We're ready to begin. The queen nodded. As the chamber began to hum with power, Han Bin thought about all the changes this might bring. If they succeeded, the Myroth might learn that accepting help wasn't weakness. If they failed, but he couldn't think about that now. The prince's life, and maybe the future of two species, depended on what happened in the next 3 days. The medical chamber hummed quietly as Dr. Han Bin Li checked the prince's vital signs for the 100th time. They were now 12 hours into the treatment. Prince Terix lay still, his silver skin looking almost transparent under the chamber's lights. His healing factor is almost completely dormant, Dr. Jai-Yun Park reported, studying her monitors. We can start the main procedure now. Taiwan prepared the genetic treatment they had created. It looked like ordinary clear liquid, but it contained millions of specially programmed cells. These cells would teach the prince's body how to heal properly again. Queen Merix watched from behind a safety screen. Commander Verix stood beside her, his face showing no emotion, but his hands were clenched tightly behind his back. Beginning the procedure, Han Bin announced. He injected the treatment into the prince's system. Now we wait. The first sign of change came 2 hours later. Color began returning to the prince's legs. Jai-Yun's instruments showed that feeling was coming back to his lower body. It's working, she said softly. The new cells are teaching his body the right way to heal. But then something went wrong. The prince's body temperature started rising quickly. Alarms began to sound throughout the medical bay. His remaining healing factor is fighting back. Ta-One shouted. It's trying to attack our treatment. Han Bin moved quickly. We need to cool him down now. Kai, bring the emergency cooling units. The young Myroth healer ran to help. Together, they worked to save the prince's life. Hours passed as they fought to keep his temperature down. Dr. Li, Queen Merix called out. Look at the other chambers. Han Bin turned. In the medical bay's other rooms, 3 young Myroth warriors lay in similar chambers. They had shown the same symptoms as the prince, and their families had begged for the same treatment. Their readings are changing too, Jai-Yun said, checking her instruments. Whatever happens to the prince will happen to them as well. Commander Verix stepped forward. Then we must succeed, not just for the prince, but for all our people. The night passed slowly. The prince's temperature finally began to drop. By morning, his silver skin had returned to its normal gray color. The paralysis was gone. Prince Terix opened his eyes. I can feel my legs, he whispered. He moved his toes, then his feet. It doesn't hurt anymore. The other patients were improving too. Their bodies were accepting the new way of healing. It was gentler than before, but still stronger than most species. You have done it, Queen Merix said to Han Bin. You have saved my son, and perhaps you have saved much more than that. Han Bin looked around the medical bay. Young Myroth healers were talking excitedly with Jai-Yun and Taiwan, asking questions about human medicine. Even some of the older warriors looked interested. Your Majesty, he said, I think this is just the beginning. Your people have learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from being willing to change. The prince sat up in his bed. Mother, he said, I want to study human medicine. Properly this time, not in secret. We need to learn everything we can from them. Queen Merrick smiled. Yes, she said. I think it's time for the Myroth to learn new ways of being strong. Outside the medical bay's windows, the first sun of the Myroth world was rising. It was the dawn of a new day, and perhaps a new age, for both their peoples. 1 month after Prince Terex's successful treatment, Dr. Han Bin Lee stood before the Myroth High Council. The great hall was filled with warriors and leaders from across their empire. Dr. Jai Yun Park and Dr. Tadwan Kim stood beside him, ready to present their findings. Honored council members, Han Bin began, we have discovered something important about the illness that affected Prince Terex. It is not an isolated case. The condition will eventually affect all Myroth who carry the enhanced healing modifications. The hall erupted in concerned whispers. Queen Merrick raised her hand for silence. Explain further, Dr. Lee. Jai Yun stepped forward with their research data. The genetic modifications your ancestors made are still trying to make you stronger, but they have gone too far. Your bodies cannot handle any more improvements. Without treatment, the condition that affected Prince Terex will spread throughout your population. Commander Verix, now standing with the medical advisors, spoke up. We have confirmed 17 new cases in the outer provinces. All show the same symptoms the prince had. Taiwan displayed the genetic charts on the large screens. The good news is that we can help. The treatment we developed for Prince Terex can be adapted for all Myroth. But there is something else you need to know. Han Bin continued. The treatment will make your healing ability slightly less powerful than before. You will still heal faster than most species, but not as quickly as you once did. This is the price of stability. An older warrior stood up angrily. So we must choose between weakness and death. This is unacceptable. Prince Terex walked into the hall. His steps were strong and sure. Is it weakness to be alive? Is it weakness to be healthy? I am living proof that this treatment works. Yes, I don't heal as fast as before, but I can walk. I can think clearly. I can serve our people. The prince turned to address the entire council. For too long, we have measured strength only by how quickly we can heal, how hard we can fight. Perhaps it is time to find other kinds of strength. Queen Merrick nodded. My son speaks wisdom. Dr. Lee, how long do we have to implement this treatment across our population? Based on our calculations, Jai Yun answered, we have approximately 2 years before the condition becomes widespread. We will need to treat the younger generation first, as they are most at risk. A young Myroth scientist named Kai stepped forward. Your Majesty, many of us have already begun studying human medical techniques. With their help, we could establish treatment centers across the empire. Han Bin looked at the faces in the hall. Some showed fear, others showed anger, but many, especially the younger Myroth, showed hope. We are not asking you to become weak, he said. We are offering you a chance to become stable, to find balance. The Myroth are known throughout the galaxies for their strength. Now you can be known for your wisdom as well. The council chambers grew quiet as the Myroth leaders considered his words. Finally, Queen Merrick stood. We have always adapted to survive, she said. That is our true strength. We will accept this treatment, and we will learn from our human allies. Let it be recorded that on this day, the Myroth Empire chose a new path, one that leads not to conquest, but to healing. As the council members began to discuss implementation plans, Han Bin turned to his team. This is just the beginning, he said. We have much work ahead of us. Jai Yun smiled. Yes, but now we work together. That makes all the difference. 6 months after the High Council's decision, the great medical academy in the Myroth capital city was full of activity. Dr. Han Bin Lee watched from his office window as young Myroth students hurried between classes. Many wore the blue robes of medical students instead of the traditional warrior armor. The latest test results are very promising, Dr. Jae-yun Park said, placing a report on his desk. Over 10,000 Myroth have received the treatment. No serious side effects so far. Han Bin nodded. And how are the students adapting to the new teaching programs? Better than we expected, she replied. They learned quickly. Some have already started developing new ideas that combine Myroth and human medical techniques. The door opened, and Prince Terex entered. He too wore the blue robes of a medical student. Dr. Lee, you need to see this, he said excitedly. We've made a breakthrough in the genetics lab. They followed the prince to the laboratory where Dr. Taiwan was working with a group of Myroth scientists. The young Myroth healer, Kai, was there too. We found a way to make the treatment work faster, Kai explained. Using traditional Myroth healing crystals with human genetic therapy, we can reduce the recovery time by half. Commander Varix, who now served as head of medical security, joined them. The warrior guilds are starting to accept the changes, he reported, especially after seeing how the treated soldiers perform in training. They're not as quick to heal, but they have better stamina and clearer minds. Some still resist, Prince Terex added. They say we're giving up our heritage, but more come to accept it every day. Queen Merix called a special meeting that evening. The human doctors joined her in the palace's new medical wing. The walls, once covered only with battle scenes, now showed images of healing and learning too. Our people face a choice, the queen said. We can cling to the old ways and watch our species slowly die, or we can embrace change and grow stronger in new ways. She showed them reports from across the empire. More Myroth were choosing to study medicine. Some were even applying to human medical schools. Warriors were learning to be healers without giving up their strength. But we need to do more, she continued. Dr. Lee, I want to turn our largest warship production facility into a medical research center. Will you help us? Han Bin looked at his team. They had already stayed longer than planned, but there was still so much to do. We would be honored, he said, but on one condition. The center must be open to all species who need healing. The Myroth can become known for saving lives rather than taking them. The queen smiled. My son suggested the same thing. In fact, he has already drawn up plans for an interstellar hospital network. Prince Terex spread out the plans on the table. Imagine it, he said. Myroth strength and discipline combined with human medical knowledge, helping people across the galaxies. Han Bin looked at the former warrior prince, now dressed in healer's robes. The change in him reflected the change in his entire species. They were finding a new kind of strength, one that came from helping others rather than conquering them. You were once the most feared species in 3 galaxies, Han Bin said. Now you might become the most respected. The queen touched the medical symbol now carved into her throne. Fear is a powerful force, she said, but healing is even stronger. That is the choice we make today. 5 years had passed since the Myroth first asked humans for help. Dr. Han Bin Lee stood at the opening ceremony of the new interstellar medical center on the Myroth homeworld. The building rose into the clouds, its design combining Myroth strength with human healing wisdom. Today marks a new chapter in galactic history, Queen Merix announced to the gathered crowd. Once, ships feared to see our world on their scanners. Now they seek us out for healing. Prince Terex, now Chief Medical Director, stood beside his mother. He wore the silver and blue robes that marked him as both a warrior and a healer. 5 years ago, I could not walk, he said. Today, I help others walk again. This is true strength. Dr. Jae-yun Park, who had chosen to stay on the Myroth world, led the tour of the new facility. We have treatment rooms for every known species, she explained. The Myroth's enhanced healing knowledge, combined with human medical science, has created treatments we never thought possible. In one wing, Dr. Taiwan Kim worked with young Myroth scientists in the genetics laboratory. They had found ways to use the Myroth's genetic modifications to help other species heal faster. But this time, they were careful not to push too far. Commander Varix, who now led the medical protection fleet, reported that ships from across 3 galaxies came for treatment. "Our warriors still train for battle," he said, "but now we fight against disease and injury, not other species." Han Bin watched as a group of students passed by. Some were Myroth, their gray skin and silver eyes marking their species. But there were humans too, and other species he recognized. All wore the same medical student robes. "Did you ever think it would turn out like this?" asked Kai, now a senior medical instructor. "When you first came to help our prince?" Han Bin shook his head. "I hoped to save one life. Instead, we helped change an entire civilization." Queen Merix joined them, watching the students. "My people needed to learn that there are many kinds of strength," she said. "The strength to heal. The strength to change. The strength to admit when you need help." In the main hall, a new mural covered the wall. It showed a Myroth warrior and a human doctor working together to heal others. Below it were written words in both Myroth and human languages. "Through healing, we find our greatest victory." "The Council has approved the expansion program," Prince Terix announced. "We will build 10 more medical centers across the galaxies. Each one will be open to all species, with both Myroth and human doctors." Han Bin looked at the faces around him. Jai Yun and Todwan, who had chosen to make this their life's work. The Myroth leaders who had been brave enough to change. The students who would carry this new tradition forward. "The most feared species in 3 galaxies," he said quietly, "has become the most trusted." Queen Merix smiled. "And we are stronger now than we ever were before. Not because we heal faster, but because we help others heal." As the sun set outside, the medical center's lights glowed like beacons in the darkness. They were beacons of hope, showing that any species could change, could grow, could learn new ways of being strong. The era of the warrior Myroth had ended. The age of the healer Myroth had begun. And the galaxies were better for it.